Hello students, welcome to the session on exception and interrupts. These are the errors which occur during runtime, or these are the programs which will be handled during the runtime. These are predefined interrupts or exceptions. While executing any program, if any runtime error occurs, it can be handled through an external program or external service, or it can be handled through predefined functions. So what are those functions, what are the types of interrupts and exceptions, and how they are generated, that we will see in this lecture. So what is exception and interrupt? It is a special kind of control transfer. So whenever a program is in normal execution flow, and if any exception or interrupt occurs, then the flow of execution will be transferred to the special routine or service which will handle this exception or interrupt. So there is a special kind of control transfer. They alter the normal program flow to handle external events or to report errors or exception conditions. So whenever exception is occurred, the program flow, that is the control, is transferred to the external event, or it may be transferred to the error reporting system, or it may be transferred to some exception condition. In each case, there may be a program or there may be a function which will handle the condition, and that handlers of exception or interrupt are called as service routines. Interrupts are used to handle asynchronous events external to the processor. Asynchronous means they happen during the runtime, they are not the events or parts of the program, they are happening external to the processor. But exceptions handle conditions detected by the processor itself in the course of executing instruction, whereas the exception which occurs during the runtime of program, and they are generated by processor due to some condition or due to execution of some instruction where data is incorrect. So those are the exceptions. Runtime errors. Interrupts are the events, external events to the program, whereas exceptions are internally generated by any program. There are two types of interrupt: maskable and non-maskable. Exception, they are processor detected. These are further classified as fault, trap and abort. Three types of exceptions. They can be programmed in the programming language. The instructions int 0, int 3, intn and bound can trigger exception. So these are the instructions which are available in assembly language programming, which can generate an exception. These instructions are often called as software interrupts because they are defined in software. They can be included in our program to handle any exception for wrong type of inputs, or for accessing the location which is not in accessible limit, but the processor handle them as an exception. Now how to identify an interrupt? The NMI and exceptions recognized by the processor are assigned predetermined identifiers which range from 0 to 31. So the NMI and exceptions are having number 0 to 31. Any number in between 0 to 31 means 32 type of exceptions can be raised, and it belongs to the exception handling. The identifiers of the maskable interrupts are determined by external interrupt controller. When we want to identify a maskable interrupt, then we can use an controller 8259A, and it can be communicated to the processor during the processor's interrupt acknowledge sequence. So when processor checks for any interrupt, then during that checking, the controller can signal or can inform the processor about and the interrupt. So there are 256 interrupts numbered from 0 to 255 as listed in the slide. So first is 0, it is divide error, divide by 0. 1 is debug exception. While debugging, if any error occurs, the exception or interrupt generated is 1. Then 2 is for non-maskable interrupt. We need to handle it, we cannot neglect it, so such type of interrupts are non-maskable. and the number is 2. 3 is breakpoint, 1 byte int3 instruction. So when int3 is there, then it is an breakpoint interrupt, and it is 1 byte instruction. Next is INTO instruction, which is overflow, interrupt overflow. Then bound instruction, which will check the bounds. This will be raised during the array access or the segment access, when the programs is trying to access the memory location. In case of array which is not allocated to array, suppose we have the size 10 array, then we cannot access 11th element, that is bound condition. Or if we are accessing the memory location for code and the memory location is not part of code segment, then it is again a bound check. Then invalid opcode, the operation code is invalid, the operation is not defined in the processor structure, so such type of error is invalid opcode. So such number of interrupts are there: segment not present, stack exception, general protection, then page fault, coprocessor error, and some are reserved. So 9 number, 15 number, 17 to 31 are reserved, whereas 32 to 255 they are available for external interrupts via INTR pin. INTR is a pin on the 80386. So such various interrupts can be generated by the program, and it can be handled by the predefined service routines. Now there are 3 types of exceptions. So how it will classify the exception? For that, the different mechanisms or conditions are there. So first one is fault. Faults are either detected before instruction begins or execute, or during execution of instruction. They permits the instruction to be restarted. So if it is identified before execution, we can restart the instruction. Traps reported at the instruction boundary immediately after instruction in which exception was detected. So at the end of instruction execution completion, these traps are reported, and abort used to report several errors such as hardware error and inconsistent or illegal values in the system table. So when hardware error occurs, we cannot perform further action and the process will fail. So such type of errors or exceptions are abort. We have to abort the process, we cannot continue it. With the fault we can continue because we can restart. With the traps, as it is reported after completion of instruction can be restarted, or we can restart the process, but in case of abort, the restart option is not available. Now enabling and disabling interrupts. There are various types of pins on the processor, plus we have some flags on the processor which can be used for enabling and disabling the interrupt. So whenever there is NMI, that is non-maskable interrupt, then NMI mask further NMI, that means an interrupt handling service routine during execution does not allow 386 to receive any further interrupt, so it disables the NMI pin. Then IF interrupt flag, if it is set, that means it is already handling the interrupt and it will avoid receiving further value. So IF the interrupt flag mask INTR. INTR is a pin on the 80386. Then RF resume flag mask debug fault. So whenever there is a debug fault, it can be masked by using RF, that means we can avoid it and we can continue the execution if RF is set to 1. So processor will avoid the debug faults. Then move or pop to stack segment mask some interrupt and exception. So we can move or pop the value from stack segment and we can fetch next address to continue the execution. So it will mask some interrupt and exception. So this will disable and enable the interrupts. Now while executing the process and while handling the interrupts, if number of interrupts are raised at the same time, then which interrupt to be handled first? For that we have the priority, and actually in the slide we can observe that the number of conditions are there, and for each condition some priority is assigned. So lowest to highest or highest to lowest. For the highest, the faults except debug fault are having highest priority. So the faults will be handled at the top level. if we have two interrupts, one is from fault, other is debug fault, then the fault will be handled firstly and then the debug fault will be handled secondly. If you have a trap instruction, anything interrupt overflow, interrupt n, interrupt 3 and INTR interrupt, then INTR is handled at the last, whereas the instruction from trap category will be handled first. So based on the highest and highest to lowest priority, the interrupts and exceptions will be handled if they arise at the same time. Now how interrupt descriptor table looks alike. The diagram is shown in the slide. The IDT register and table is there. IDT register, it contains two values. One is the IDT base address, starting address of the interrupt descriptor table, and another is limit. What is the limit of table? So limit is a 16-bit value, whereas base is a 32-bit value. Now as we have 255 interrupt, so maximum entries in the table are 255. For each interrupt there is an gate which will be dedicated for particular interrupt. So based on the interrupt value 0, 1, 2, 3 and up to 25 to 255, particular gate will be accessed, and from that gate you will get the address of interrupt service routine, the program which will be used to handle interrupt. So the programs are predefined, service routines are predefined, they are stored in the memory, their addresses are stored in the gate, and these gates are available in IDT, that is interrupt descriptor table. So by using the IDT register we access the table, and by using interrupt value we access particular gate numbered from 0 to 255. Here it is shown as a 0, 1, 2 up to n. So maximum 256 entries and the last gate number is 255. This way the interrupt handling service routine is called from the processor. Now the descriptor format for LIDT and SIDT, the instructions used to load or store the descriptor table, store IDT or load IDT. Interrupt descriptor table associates each interrupt or exception identifier with a descriptor for instructions that service the associated event. What it means? The service routine is there, that service routine's address is linked with the particular descriptor, and that descriptor is numbered from 0 to 255. So whenever interrupt is generated, the interrupt gate or descriptor which is numbered equal to the interrupt number is used to access the ISR. As there are only 256 in identifiers, the IDT need not contain more than 256 descriptors. So maximum 256 entries and maximum 256 descriptors. Processor locates IDT by means of IDT register. So by using IDT register we get IDT table, and from IDT table we get descriptor. From descriptor we get the address of ISR. Instructions which work on the IDT are, that is the interrupt descriptor register, are LIDT and SIDT, store and load interrupt descriptor table register. Both instructions have one explicit operand, the address in memory of 6 byte area. So for each descriptor 6 bytes are allocated, and that 6 byte address is the only operand for LIDT or SIDT. Here we can see in the slide that two values we have in the descriptor format, 32-bit base and the 16-bit limit. The working of instructions LIDT and SIDT. The first one is load IDT register. It loads the IDT register with the linear base address and limit values contained in the memory operand. It will be executed when CPL is equal to 0. For execution of LIDT, CPL value should be 0, current privilege level. Second, SIDT, it copies the base and limit values stored in the register to a memory location which is mentioned in the instruction. This instruction can be executed at any privilege level. As we are going to copy the register value, we can copy it at any privilege level, but when you want to update the register, it should be at privilege level 0. Now the structure of IDT gate descriptor. First one is task gate, second interrupt gate, and third one is trap gate. Each gate contains some flags, some predefined values which are reserved, so 0 0 1 1 like that. The values are predefined, we cannot change them, and each value defines some meaning. Some areas are there which are not used, so they are mentioned as a not used. There is a selector. In each gate we have selector, and in interrupt gate and trap gate we can observe and offset. So selector is a base address plus offset, it is the movement from that selector. Task gate, it contains selector. Using that selector we can directly access the ISR, interrupt service routine. In task gate there is no requirement of accessing the offset value. So like this we have three different gates: task gate, interrupt gate, and trap gate. Now when we want to execute any interrupt service routine, then we need an address, and that address will be stored in the IDT table, and it may be in the LDT or GDT. So how it is accessed? So by using interrupt ID, that means 0 to 255, from IDT we receive or we access the trap gate or interrupt gate. So by using trap gate we can directly point to the ISR, or by using interrupt gate we point to the segment selector or segment descriptor in LDT or GDT. From LDT or GDT we get the base address of the table, plus we get the offset value from the interrupt gate or from the trap gate. Either use the task gate or use interrupt and trap gate. If it is trap or interrupt gate, we can access LDT and GDT where segment address is there and offset value, or by using task gate we can directly point to the ISR. So this way it